L.A. Staff is frantically rushing to hide that tape, yet the rumor is undoubtedly loose. Shaquille O'Neal simply trapped LeBron James inside the corridor following the squad's latest embarrassing defeat by New York, and things almost spiraled into a catastrophe. It all began like this.
Because the game is different. Like, I want people to understand, and our fans to understand, that playing 82 games in the 80s and 90s is not the same as playing 82 games in the 2000s.
Per trusted sources plus direct accounts, when the match finally concluded, Shaq was already lurking inside the hallway, obstructing the route toward the changing area. Then he posed one query which made the whole Lakers collective pause. At that point, Rob Pelinka was plainly sweating, striving to hold them split. Then LeBron grasped that his recent broadcast remarks didn't merely go wide. They ignited a feud with the sole guy huge enough to wreck his standing. Stay until? You catch the query Shaq voiced to silence down LeBron's whole crew. Plus, why experts claim this marks the start of the fall for James. See, if you believe that broadcast bit was crazy, the video that LA is working to erase right now exists on a totally separate plane. We're speaking regarding a game which was intended to focus on endurance, yet it wound up looking like a total collapse. So it is February 1st, 2026. LA got absolutely crushed at the Garden. They fell 112-100. Truly, it wasn't close. OG Anunoby and Landry Shamet were basically working the Lakers' defense like a warm-up session. Luka Doncic concluded with 30 points, while LeBron concluded with 22. Yet, man, he looked every bit of 41 years old out there. Post the match, he was strolling the MSG hallway likely, already scheming on what excuses to use on the next show when he slammed into a literal wall. Shaq was simply standing, there leaning on the concrete, and not there to film a funny ESPN skit. He was 325 pounds of pure 90s era. Do not mess with me energy? He was simply blocking the route to the locker room. Those folks who stood right there said the vibe went from 0 to 100 instantly. Shaq didn't even say hello. He looked LeBron dead in the eye and dropped a phrase that made everyone stop cold. How are you going to call this tough when you play in a league where even staring at a guy too long is a technical foul? And naturally, LeBron James tried to do that thing where he explains pro basketball, discussing pace, space, how the game is faster in 2026, but Shaq wasn't buying any of that. He cut him off and snapped back. Pace doesn't matter when nobody is allowed to touch you. You're only preaching on speed because you're scared to admit your body isn't what it used to be and you're playing in a soft era. Then Shaq went for the throat. He went straight for Anthony Davis, Joel Embiid, and all the other NBA players who have been skipping games and used them as the ultimate proof. Shaq's entire point was that in his day, you played until the bone was exposed. Today, these guys skip 3 weeks because they landed a little weird. He straight up called LeBron delusional for that broadcast take, but that's not even the wildest part. This face-off got so bad that people actually had to jump in the middle, trying to drag Shaq away from LeBron. You've got the Lakers people in a bunch of suits trying to haul a 7-foot tank away from their player while the support staff was simply standing in the shadows watching the whole thing unfold. And just wait until we look at the actual numbers from back then. Because what we found proves the NBA in the 90s wasn't just physical, it was an entirely different sport. But see, before we go into that, you have to understand why Shaq finally lost his mind. Shaq is basically the last of a dying breed. One of the few guys who actually lived through both sides of this. He saw the game go from actual basketball to the soft, lazy game we have in this modern era. He entered the league in '92 and was trading elbows with 80s enforcers who were literally trained to take your head off if you breathed on them too hard. He saw the hand-checking rules vanish in 2004. He saw the flagrant foul rules turn into a safety net, and he watched the court space out until there was nowhere to stretch it anymore. So when he hears LeBron speak about the game being harder now, it feels like a slap in the face to every legend who actually had to fight for a bucket. And don't let the speed argument fool you. LeBron likes to harp on the pace being higher today, but if you check the actual numbers, he's basically doing math in a vacuum. Back in the 1984-85 season, the league pace was 102. In 1985-86, sat at 102. In 2026, the league actually dipped to 99.5. We're discussing the 1984-85 Denver Nuggets running at a pace of 107, a number making most modern teams pass out by the third. What about the Showtime Lakers, who were consistently clocking in over 100? The difference, however, is that they were doing it while getting hand-checked, clotheslined, and shoved into the front row. There was no freedom of movement back then. There was just survival. To define true grit, examine the Jordan rules. The Detroit Pistons operated with far more than simply a strict defensive strategy. They fundamentally held a list of rules for assaulting Michael Jordan without risking arrest. Whenever MJ attacked the basket, he was planted on the hardwood, unconditionally. No flagrant fouls existed for excessive brutality. Now, contrast that with the existence of an NBA icon in 2026. LeBron invests over $1 million annually on physical, recovery, cryotherapy chambers, pressurized oxygen tanks, personal culinary experts, and traveling on bespoke private aircraft where he can rest in a queen-sized bed. Previously in the 80s, Charles Barkley and Magic Johnson were traveling economy, battling for armrest territory with ordinary passengers and resting in standard motels. Shaq actually highlighted this in April 2025 when he straight up stated, "LeBron's durability is a result of competing in a gentle period."
It's less physical, and he's always done this his whole career. He never really done that. So, but the fact that it's less physical, I think it definitely helps him.
He wasn't incorrect. If LeBron had to travel economy and get hammered by Rick Mahorn every evening, he certainly wouldn't be competing at 41. Even the legend himself, Michael Jordan, interjected back in June 2025. MJ didn't just challenge the competitive spirit of these athletes. He revealed the entire rest management atmosphere and spoke about how he missed the era when we had truly dedicated competitors in the league.
That type of competition, that type of competitiveness is what I live for, and I miss it. I miss that aspect of playing the game of basketball.
Jordan competed in all 82 matches in 9 separate campaigns, and Kobe Bryant notably competed with a fractured digit and declined to sit out. But nowadays, LeBron's team justifies recovering whenever a joint feels a bit tight. That's why Shaq's Netflix Power rankings list from earlier this year was such a major declaration. He was requested to grade his top 10 athletes, and he placed MJ at first and Kobe at second. LeBron, he slipped down to third.
Number 3, I'm going to go with the King, LeBron James. Number 2, I'm going with rest in peace, Kobe Bean Bryant. And number 1, the greatest player of all time is Michael Jordan.
And Shaq's justification was straightforward. It's regarding the predator mindset. Jordan didn't require a broadcast to explain how tough it was. He simply went out and proved it by destroying everybody in his way, regardless of how many times they attempted to crush him. But if you believe Shaq is the only person who's disgusted with the justifications, you haven't heard what Paul Pierce had to voice regarding LeBron's pace hypothesis, because he didn't merely object, he went ballistic on him. However, see, the actual cause, Shaq finally snapped in that hallway, isn't just about some broadcast segment. It's because, for men who actually constructed this association, LeBron is lacking the single element you cannot purchase with $1 billion. The terror effect? Shaq's been voicing it all through 2025 and 2026. He explicitly informed the globe nobody was afraid of LeBron.
I didn't think players really feared LeBron like they did Jordan.
Never really heard any players say they fear LeBron.
Which is legitimate because with LeBron, you honor the numbers, yes. But nobody was losing rest. Nobody was pondering, oh, LeBron is competing today. This is going to be a disaster for me. But when you stepped up against MJ or Kobe, you realized they were arriving to steal your spirit. You weren't just concerned about a defeat. You were petrified of getting humiliated and having your will shattered in front of everybody. Now, simply visualize how the association shifted from that fighter spirit to the gentle, friendly broadcast atmosphere we've got currently. LeBron is out here filming shows with Tyrese Halliburton, giggling and teasing like they're at a vacation retreat. It's a complete departure from the 90s, which is why in Shaq's ranking, he made it formal. MJ at number 1, Kobe at number 2, and LeBron at number 3. Shaq competed with both of them, and he's informing us that if you require a basket to preserve your existence, you are contacting the Mamba, not the man who's concerned about his image and being everyone's close pal at 41 years old. And if you believe the 90s were simply slower, go back and observe the 1989 Pistons versus Bulls matchup. Bill Laimbeer, Rick Mahorn, and Charles Oakley weren't playing defense. They were executing the nearest thing to a criminal battery offense. Bill Laimbeer was always present to ensure Larry Bird exited the arena with a bruise or two, which was simply normal competition back then. And guess what? Larry Bird still arrived the following evening, prepared to command the floor again. If any of that occurred presently, you'd likely receive an immediate dismissal and a 3-match ban. But you'd assume at this stage, LeBron would have managed to shut up and honor those who arrived before him. But no, this man actually had the audacity to voice on that program that calf strains are the modern high ankle twists.
I think when I first came into the league, Reese, some of the biggest concerns of injuries was like, a high ankle sprain. You was afraid to step on somebody's ankle because there was 4 or 5 guys sitting in the paint. Because there was 4 or 5 guys sitting in the paint. And if you land on somebody's ankle, you get a high ankle sprain, you out 4 to 6 weeks. Now, that's not really much you don't really see that as much now because the game is so spread open, it's so much pace. But now you see the new high ankle sprain is the calf.
The sport is so rapid presently that these slight strains are just as severe as what they endured in the 80s or 90s. Shaq nearly lost his head at that opinion, particularly since he endured a whole profession getting chopped like a log. What about Isaiah Thomas? Recall what he lived through in the 1988 championship? Isaiah was competing on one limb, literally limping with a joint swollen to the size of a grapefruit, yet he still dropped 25 points in a single quarter. But according to Bron, his era with the rest days and billion-dollar budget is harder. Oh, and his other favorite excuse is that the 80s NBA was just 4 dudes camping in the paint, like they were just unathletic statues. But Shaq took that personally too. You're talking about Hakeem, David Robinson, and a young, lean Shaq. These weren't stationary. They were predators. They were 7-footers who could run the floor and protect the rim in a way that would make these modern big men look like children. Well, Shaq was recently asked by NBC News for his fantasy all-time starting 5. He rolled with MJ, Kobe, Karl Malone, Larry Bird, and Hakeem Olajuwon.
So if you had to do your all-time NBA starting 5, do you have one?
Kobe and Mike.
Okay.
That's the 1 and the 2. The 3, I gotta go with Bird.
Okay.
4, I gotta go with Malone. And 5, I gotta go with Hakeem.
You left somebody out.
No.
He cut LeBron out entirely. He even left himself out as well. Yeah, that's how serious this is. When the reporter asked him about James, Shaq didn't even flinch. He basically implied that if he's building a squad to win, he wants guys who aren't worried about their podcast downloads. But if you think Shaq was the only one ready to flip out over those podcast sound bites, you clearly didn't hear what I said earlier about Paul Pierce's reaction. Because the truth didn't just disagree. He basically took James's whole speed and pace theory and threw it in the trash on live TV. Pierce hopped on his fresh podcast, No Fouls Given, and he looked like he was about to jump through the screen. He's sitting there with Danny Green, who was actually trying to defend the modern game, and Pierce just cuts. It's him off mid-sentence. He goes, "Bron's talking about speed, man. We played in the 2000s when you actually had to battle through a screen. Now you just switch, doze off, and call it advanced defense." Pierce's entire point is that this speed James is flaunting is bogus because the refs won't let you touch a soul. Back in the day, if you tried to run a fast break without a blueprint, a dude like Ben Wallace or Kevin Garnett was putting you into the basket stanchion. There was a physical toll you had to pay just to cross half court. And look, you have to remember the history here. This isn't just some random vet talking. Pierce and LeBron have been at each other's throat since that 2008 East semis, where both dropped 40 in Game 7. That was when the NBA still held on to some grit and that 90s warrior mentality. They used to spit at each other in the preseason, literally. And Paul has never forgotten that James had to run to Miami just to finally get past him. To Pierce, James is trying to claim the game is harder now because it justifies why he's struggling to keep up with the young. guns in 2026. And when you think on it, you wonder, for that guy who was so competitive in his prime, why is he pushing for a soft era now, right at a time when he's getting too old for the sport? Pierce even doubled down, saying, "The switching defense today is basically a cheat code for lazy superstars. In the 90s or the 2000s, if you were guarding a star, you stayed on his hip. You fought through the elbow, slid under the screen, and you ate the bruises. Today, you just point at your teammate, switch the man, and pray the other guy misses a wide-open three."
Yeah, mentally
so
it is.
many times I'm bruised up
Yeah.
after the game. My shoulder hurts.
It's definitely
my
more physical.
It's hurting.
So why were more guys playing 75 games a year then?
Because we was tougher. Well, now we're switching everything.
He closed the segment by basically calling the modern era soft. He told Danny Green straight up that the only reason these cats are putting up these historic numbers is because the enforcer has been hunted to extinction. You can't be a Charles Oakley or a Rick Mahorn anymore because you'd be suspended for the season by November. But here's the most shocking part of all of this. On January 29th, for the first time in 21 years, basically a lifetime, in basketball, the NBA announced the All-Star starters and King James wasn't on the list. Think about how wild that is. This guy has been a lock for the All-Star since most of us watching this were in high school. But the league finally moved on. Luka Doncic is the new face of the Lakers, and the fans, the media, and even the players themselves basically voted James into the retirement home. In the final voting results for the Western Conference frontcourt, he tied for 9th place in the media vote with 3 total votes and finished 9th in the overall weighted rankings. 9th. That's essentially an eviction notice. And honestly, nobody wants to see a 41-year-old dragging the team down anymore. The narrative that it's harder now is the only card he has left to play. Think about it. If the game is actually faster and more physical, like he says, why are guys playing until they're 40? In the 90s, the game literally chewed you up and spit you out by 33. If you played 40 minutes of what was basically a wrestling match every night, there's no way you were staying till 40. James playing this long isn't evidence of durability, not dominance. It confirms he is thriving within a protected time, allowing you to simply rest your path to a 20-season run. And Diesel sensed the fear in the room instantly. While the inside the NBA team was choosing the backups on January 29th, Shaq cold-bloodedly kept LeBron off his sheet, yet he did so with a turn of the blade.
A few players that's only been slowed down because of their age. I don't want to see the king coming off the bench.
So you don't even want to see him at the game at all?
No.
Do not get confused. That wasn't some praise. That was O'Neal showing the globe that the king is essentially a sympathy pick here, and he would prefer simply not seeing him here today. Even Charles Barkley wouldn't stand down. Chuck launched a nuke claiming LeBron is finished in LA and forecasted he is bound for a farewell trip home to Cleveland.
Well, there's one thing I'm sure of. This is last year with the Lakers. He's not going to play with the Lakers next year. I've always said I'd like to see him finish in Cleveland. I'm not opposed to him getting traded to Cleveland this year.
Then it is all becoming clear. LeBron surely knew these all-star returns were going to be a nightmare for his image. Thus, he released this segment as a defensive attack. He needed to shift the discussion to a rivalry involving him and Mike before the public saw that the peers do not even rank him a top 5 talent in his own conference today. And the dark truth for LeBron, the Laker icons themselves are standing with Shaq. Magic Johnson gave an opinion back in September 2025 where he didn't even fluctuate. He picked Mike as the GOAT due to his mastery and not duration math.
That's what make him a bad boy and the best that's ever done it. Don't get it twisted. I love LeBron, but
Magic essentially told the globe that playing in the association forever won't make you the king. It just makes you a tenured staffer. For Shaq, remaining a Laker isn't some business play or a path to move merch. It is a doctrine. He is the man who produced the last three-peat this game has ever known. From 2000 to 2002, he recalls what it really took to earn those rings. It wasn't about run and gun or filming shows with partners. It was 48 minutes of getting pounded into the floor by squads like the Spurs and Kings that were frankly made just to halt him. He fought 7-footers, like Vlade Divac and Chris Webber throwing bows at his chest every single time. So when LeBron jumps on a mic, and attempts to claim that balling today is rougher because he feels the sport is quicker. It is not just a weak view to Shaq. It is a complete offense to the Lakers' legacy. And frankly, the bulk of the Lakers circle is done with it too. On January 28, 2026, five-time winner Ron Harper, who survived through the Jordan Bulls and the Shaq-Kobe Lakers, really had enough. He viewed that video of LeBron equating calf pulls to high ankle twists, and he did not even draft a manifesto. He just shared a direct note on X. These reasons are foolish. To place this in focus, Ron Harper is 62, and he has still got more gangster spirit than half the kids in the game right now. He is staring at LeBron like, man, I was 36, starting 80 nights a year and checking the top scorer on the court without $1 billion wallet or a freeze tank. To men like Shaq and Harper, LeBron is not just protecting the current times. He is aiming to erase the battle they truly lived through just to make his own durability seem more heroic. It is hitting a boiling stage in Los Angeles because the heads who came up on Magic's Showtime and Shaq's Power do not wish to learn about soft muscle issues. They are watching a 41-year-old who looks more concerned about his broadcast numbers than the Lakers' protection level. The craziest piece regarding this whole collapse is the sheer falseness of it all. LeBron lived his entire life posing as the perfect scholar of the sport, always praising the icons when it served his golden child story. Yet the moment the argument truly gets close, he turns the page. Instantly, the time that created Mike and Shaq wasn't harder. It was simply slower and simpler. It is a standard pride play. LeBron knows the 2026 All-Star miss wasn't a glitch. It was a warning that his clock is done. So he leaks these broadcast views as a defensive move. He is essentially stating, if I am not leading now, it is because the sport is tougher for me than it ever was for Mike. Yet you cannot have it both sides. You cannot aim to be the GOAT because of your durability math while at once conceding the sole cause you have survived this long is that the game morphed into a touch-free game. If the 90s were so slow, then why did it take a demigod like LeBron until 2026 to accept he couldn't even crack an all-star opening roster? At this stage, LeBron has formally torched his path to the upper room of NBA royalty. He felt he was being smooth, yet all he did was show he isn't on the same tier as the Titans before him. You can keep the scoring record, LeBron. You can last 25 years in a protected no-touch game, but you will never hold the honor of the guys you just deemed beneath. The sand is marked. So for you seeing this, you have to pick. Are you siding with the 90s muscle who thrived on pain and snapped limbs? Or are you riding with the narrative? Royalty? The Titans have cast their votes, and they align with Diesel.